we have one example where it's a company in the financial services space. And if their target account has FDIC on their website, it's 2x more likely to close. If it has SOC 2 compliance, it's 1/10 is likely to close. So the other kind of magical thing about Deepline is everything is code. And that doesn't matter to you most of the time. It shouldn't matter to you most of the time. The pattern we've been hearing from kind of bleeding edge teams is centralized data and decentralized agents. So they spend even more time getting really clean data in a central location, a data warehouse or the CRM. But if you try to describe an AI SDR and build it at that level, you will probably fail.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Stacked GTM podcast. I'm Andy Mowat with my co-host Noah Marks. Today, we are continuing our series on the GTM Engineer. I'm excited to have Jai Toor from Deepline here today. I described them before we hit record as basically taking a developer-first approach to what Clay is doing, but we are seeing more and more companies start to use Deepline, and excited to kind of deep dive with Jai today. Thanks, Jai, for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
And did I say your name correctly?
Yes, that's it, Jai.
All right. Yeah, so maybe just start it off with just a couple second description of what you guys do and what the vision is.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Jai Toor. I'm one of the co-founders of Deepline. The core problem that we've been solving for our customers is go-to-market data infrastructure. So that is everything from third-party data sources to first-party data sources, getting data from your CRM, doing that programmatically, making it really easy, getting it from data providers for contact information. But what we've actually seen is like the differentiator in our approach is we made everything very developer-centric, designed for agents. So we're arguably the first completely Claude Code native company because you can't actually get that much value out of us unless you're using something like Claude Code or Codex. And what we found is by giving the agents a lot of tools and kind of guidance on what good looks like, you're able to programmatically find the best solution for your particular use case. And so giving dev tools to agents for go-to-market use cases is how we've taken our approach to solve this problem. And the programmatic approach is try a lot of things, see what works, and then deploy it to production. And we give you all the tools to go from, hey, this is a problem I'm trying to solve. You type that into Claude Code. It will go look at our offering and say, what are all the pieces of Deepline that can help solve this exact problem? It'll do additional research online to find things that we haven't thought of also, and then combine all that information, test it, make sure it actually works for what you're doing, and then deploy it. And it does all of that in the background without you having to micromanage or get too involved in like, hey, is this a valid email? Or like, what does valid even mean? What's a catch-all? It's going to give you guidance and help you through that process.
So you've basically taken the waterfall approach, plus you've also put a lot of intelligence and experience into making these decisions. And so people can just say, hey, I need to solve this problem, and then you'll go out and recommend the best way. Am I aware and conscious of what vendors you're using, or is that, or do you feel like that's not really relevant in most cases?
It's fully transparent. So we will say which provider we're getting different data points from. We allow you to bring your own keys as well. So if you have an existing relationship with Apollo or ZoomInfo, you're able to bring those keys in. If you have a provider that we don't have and you want to add, you can use our generic connector, and that will allow you to connect to any HTTP API and then add it to Waterfall as well. So our plan is to be as interoperable as possible, very little constraint on what you can do in the platform. The goal is to make it as easy as possible to execute on that, no matter what service you're using or where you're getting the data from. And the waterfall approach, my mental model has kind of shifted over the last couple of months of like the contact waterfall. That's what everybody's been doing of like try 8 different things and then whichever one works is the one that you should go with. We're now taking that approach to basically everything. Which providers should you search on? Let's try 4 or 5 different ones and aggregate the results and see which one's actually best for your use case going forward. And we'll track that information stored in memory. So everything from like, where should I find top line information, or what really niche data source is useful for me that wouldn't make sense for anyone else. All of those things we can waterfall as well. So it's try as many different options as possible, see which ones are actually good with validated like consistent data, and then move from there to solve your problem.
I like that. So, I mean, effectively, are you building like a little file within Claude Code says these are my preferred waterfall. The next time I go use it for the next thing and the next thing. So, is the tool actually getting smarter as it goes? And then how do I train it without? Is there a sandbox where I can just play with it on your site to say, hey, I want to see these three people. Can you go give me the best information? And then I can test it before I have to go build that out?
Yeah, the primary interface is a coding agent.
Yeah.
On our website, we're really just logging and showing you billing and what you've done already. But if you want to modify something, we'll actually drive you back to the agent. Any coding agent will do. We're agnostic to that part, but it's just easier to design for that interface now, and it's relatively low cost for the end user. Also, um, going back to your question, can you repeat the beginning of that question?
Yeah, I guess what I was wondering is there's a lot of times when before I mean,
Oh,
I've now moved from building in, CRM and integrating to developing, and I think that's a fun next topic, which is
yeah.
how is your customer base evolving? But
Mhm,
I often wanna just before I go code it, I
mhm.
want to explore the data set a little bit first to be like, "Hey, give me Noah and Jai and give me their emails and tell me what's right," before I go code that up, and do I have that ability within you, or have you
Yeah,
thought about
yeah,
that?
absolutely. Exactly. So you'll kind of use preview data sets and be able to test in the coding agent. So let's say I'm going from scratch. I don't know anything about a particular customer. I'm coming in as a consultant. I'm not an expert in their product. I don't know anything about their niche. My typical route of how I solve this problem, and it's the same pattern for every single company I've worked with over the last couple months, and it hits every single time. And I'm kind of surprised by how consistently this works is I will start with a research step where I
Yes.
say, go look at all the public and private data sources that make sense for this particular niche. And that works well for everything from standard B2B companies to the one that put me over the edge. And I think I talk about this one a lot is we had a mining safety company come in and say, can we use Deepline to find mining safety signals? And I honestly was like, I have no idea. I couldn't tell you where to start there. But what we did is we gave the agent access to Reddit, Twitter, the web, and said, go find data that would help us solve this problem. And what it did is it found a Reddit thread that had a ML model for mining safety accidents, and the data is beautiful subreddit. And then it used that ML model to turn that into a scoring model of, hey, here's mining companies that are likely to have a safety incident in the next 90 days. And then it used that combined with hiring signals to see who's hiring safety coordinators. And then it got the contact information for all the safety coordinators or new hires at all of those companies. And it did it in less than 30 minutes. So I went in going, I have no idea how to solve this problem. It found public and private proprietary signals to answer the actual problem that we had and get me to a really good outcome. And so I think that that pattern of public information, what's like a public signal that we can learn more about to help guide us, combining that with the proprietary information is kind of the magic in the back end here of what over and over again has been really powerful. And I've spoken to a couple other kind of people I admire in this space, and they have very similar approaches right now. And then that's kind of like the exploration phase where we'll go in and just talk to the agent and say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. Try a couple different things. Show me what that looks like, and let me look at it, see if this feels right. It'll pop up a spreadsheet or a table view, similar to Clay or what most tools will do in the output. And then you can give feedback there and say, this one doesn't look good, this isn't exactly what I wanted, and keep iterating until you find what you want. And then that's kind of like the less deterministic phase where I call it explore and exploit. So explore all the potential options for solving your problem. And then when you're happy with the outcome or you feel like you got a good outcome, you can deploy as deterministic code. So the other kind of magical thing about Deepline is everything is code. And that doesn't matter to you most of the time. It shouldn't matter to you most of the time. But the reason we do that is one, agents are very good at writing code. Code is testable, deterministic. It does the same thing over and over again, which agent like LLMs are not going to do. So as soon as you know you're happy with something, turn it into a script that just does the exact same thing over and over again. And we call them plays.
Yeah.
But a play is essentially like a set of steps. So it can be anything like a contact waterfall plus an email send or any set of steps that go together in a like set of actions, you can plug and play those together to build whatever else you need. So the atomic unit is a line of code, and then we combine triggers or steps in that line of code uh, to pass data between them in a play or a workflow. And then those workflows are deterministic. So it should always do the exact same thing, minimal risk of going off the rails.
Can I interject on this? Because
Yeah.
so first of all, I spent months back in my investment banking days going out to Western Colorado
Yeah.
for some mining
Yeah.
projects. So I've built out the map. I mean, I was deep in the mines. So this is a perfect example. Like this illustrates exactly what I think the value proposition is to me, which is effectively there are a lot of pre-built applications that are going the opposite direction that I think you're going, which is they're making the coding easier and more with a graphical user interface for folks that aren't using Claude. It's more for
Yeah.
like the front end ops user. You're
Mm.
going but to do that, you've got to have an application that somebody's already pre-built and kind of designed the guidelines for. The
Mhm.
other route is this perfect example of like, here's a scenario that nobody else has engaged on before that we can now develop and build ourselves and own and explore, which is what is the possibility. And I think that's, to me, did I capture that? Is that the right representation?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I was on a customer call a couple days ago, and the way he described it was, uh, when I use other AI tools or MCPs, I feel like I'm configuring a tool, but when I use Deepline, it just gets out of the way, and that's what we're trying to design. Is you shouldn't actually have to think about how Deepline works or what it does. You just describe what you want and what you're trying to accomplish, and we'll help you find the best solution there.
Got it. So you have all the power in your possession. You're not limited by other wrappers that are effectively
Exactly.
constrained what you can do. Now it's pretty much unlimited, but you do have to be comfortable with that development environment. So I think that's the leap, right? That's what you need to get to.
But that
The
that may be my question I was curious about is 6 months ago, I think many people hadn't made that leap, right? Like,
Mhm.
pretty much every RevOps person hadn't, and in the last 6 months, anybody that is good has figured out that they've gotta make that leap, and then
Mhm.
you can become a coder just by asking it and screenshotting it back and forth. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, who is your target customer? Are you focused mostly on GTM teams right now? Are you going for like cross entire enterprise to try to be their data stack? Are you working with product teams? I'm sure the answer is yes. And
Yeah.
but how do you think about like the target audience for what you're doing?
Yeah, I think the primary audience where we're most focused, because I think they have the biggest problem that is currently unsolved. It's engineering teams that work within GTM. So
Mm.
it's growth engineers, GTM engineers, applied AI. Um, there's lots of different titles. People kind of make them up at some point. But I think it's really, if you're building a production system or something that is like business critical within a B2B company, that is a perfect use case for us. So we want people to be building on top of us. We're a dev tool or an infrastructure company that lets you do that. The benefit again is if we focus on that market, because the coding agents are effectively junior engineers right now, they're going to continue to get better. And there is a bit of a nuance here of like Claude Cowork is effectively the same thing as Claude Code. It just changes some limitations. So we have users using Claude Cowork without problems. You can technically use us in Claude via MCP. The experience is not quite as good. There's some technical challenges that we haven't quite solved there, but it will be eventually at parity as well. So I think the interface is kind of changing over time, and we'll be able to work anywhere. Another quick example is we had an event last week in New York where Notion, Julia Biedri Gonzalez from Notion was speaking about how they think about agents internally. And they used their internal agents product. It's like the Notion agents within Notion. And there's a lot of benefits to that in terms of what data is available and how reps can actually use it. Uh, but one of the challenges is how do you get all the integration set up and how do you get all the data into Notion? And because of the way we've set up our SDK, we can actually just deploy Deepline directly to Notion agents. So a Notion worker can just have Deepline natively integrated with it and work out of the box. So it's very much like anywhere you are doing GTM work in your entire system, you will be able to use us. But where is the biggest gap? It's if you're building really business critical systems at scale. That's the hardest thing to do right now, and only a handful of teams have really nailed that. Modal is one of the teams and customers that we had speak last week, and they're a very engineering driven culture. And I'm not going to pretend everybody should do this. It's definitely like you need an engineer and an engineering driven culture to really nail it. But when you have that, it's just so powerful. So
Well, and
yeah,
that's the beauty of it too, is like everyone's going to become an engineer.
yeah,
If you're not now, you will be soon.
yeah.
I heard you talk about, I guess there's the data side, and then there's, I guess, the scraping side. The data
Mhm.
side makes perfect sense, right? There's all the vendors, you can go out and you can do that, and you can effectively wholesale it and take a margin. I'm
And
curious, are you effectively also competing with like Exa and AnySite and people like that as well too?
not directly. I don't think that's our specialty. They're
Okay.
going to be much better at a lot of the aspects of that. So you can use Exa and Parallel and Firecrawl. Those are all just providers
Yeah.
in our platform. And uh, there's use cases where I would recommend different ones for different use cases. So our job again is just give you the best solution to your problem, regardless of how it's provided. The one case in which we do have to like slightly go that direction is Clay has this tool called Clayagent, which is just a general agent, and it's very good at general tasks. And we do have to have something that like isn't quite Cloud Code, works in the cloud, that has those types of problem solving skills. So we have one feature that is that, but I wouldn't say it's like core to our business. A lot of the time, we use off the shelf tools for most of that information.
Okay. But I could still use you to manage all of the Exa and Firecrawl, AnySite and everything like that,
Exactly.
and to be able to.
Orchestration and data storage and optimization of your prompts is all stuff that we would be helping with. But the actual scraping of a website is gonna. I'd recommend using someone else, just because there's so many nuances in that business. There's obviously a lot of big companies that only do that, and it's still really hard. So I
I
think,
was getting into a debate with the founder of AnySite around, hey, can you scrape LinkedIn? And because everyone gets busted at some point,
yeah,
right? And so if you ended up doing that, you've always got to be chasing that, and it becomes a focus of your business rather than the orchestration
yeah.
and the optimization of prompts. That makes a ton
Yeah,
of sense.
you can become a victim of your own success. Then you have to play more strictly on these challenges. And I think Exa used to be able to do LinkedIn, and now no longer is able to. And it's going to happen to everyone. You can't really depend on that. And I'm sure that they have better opinions on this, but how companies are going to monetize their data or public data is going to be structured or available. Part of me is like, all data is going to be free, but at the same time, like, what are the incentives then? How are we going to get around this kind of data availability problem from the public space?
How do you maybe you just walked right into it then? How do you press?
Yeah.
You know, I've heard some people say I'm cutting my clay bill dramatically by using
Mhm.
you folks. Like, tell us, you know, share the pricing approach and philosophy.
Yeah. I think we took a lot of uh, insight from OpenRouter, which is a LLM router, and the value that they are adding is everything around the LLM. Because again, we're not storing the data for you, or we're not providing the data. We're not a data provider. Uh, our margins are not kind of dependent on how efficiently we can gather that data. Our value is in the orchestration and the discoverability and making it work in production. So I almost think of us closer to like an OpenRouter or a Vercel than a Clay, because Clay's value is in that enrichment piece and building that, and they're moving more towards systems, which is super valuable. But when we look at who makes sense to us, OpenRouter's a target. Like, this is what we want to look like. And I think the hard part about OpenRouter is what they are pricing on is a little bit more consistent. It's just like tokens and usage. We have like 100 different variations of what data points are and how they're priced and when you get charged versus not charged. So I think we want to be OpenRouter, but also need to figure out how to actually make that work at scale with lots of complexity. Um, and then the other one is Vercel, of making it very easy to get value immediately. A lot of data providers, because that is their kind of core value is the data itself. They price it like a subscription, and you have to sign up and go through this process. And we're kind of sitting there like, if agents are going to be really good at getting information, you can't have every single one be behind a paywall or like a subscription. So where the market is going is, I think, more pay-as-you-go features, and we're already seeing it in a lot of different places. So our core premise is we will always have pay-as-you-go, no minimums. You can come in by one data point if you want. That's not necessarily what we're worried about. You should be able to test everything that you want to test right away. In terms of infrastructure that we provide on top of that, everybody who signs up for Deepline gets their own custom Postgres database that they can edit and access. So it's built in. Everything that you enrich automatically goes there. We're using this for caching, so you don't pay for the same data point twice. We're using it to store information in workflows. And GTM engineers have generally been just like spinning up their own databases or using their data warehouse. But we do see that like additional value is kind of required to scale what we're doing here. And then we have a workflow engine as well. And both of those are priced on compute. So if you have a very lightweight workflow that is just hitting a couple APIs, it's going to be pretty minimal cost. If you have something that's super heavy compute usage and is processing millions of rows every day, it'll be higher cost, but you can see that very transparently in our system. And so the approach is simple pricing, very much focused on value and when you are compounding. And we see that the largest companies are going to most likely spend a lot more on us over time. But how we get that is we're building for that self-serve experience and then upgrading to enterprise from there.
I love the open router parallel. Go ahead. No.
So thinking through this, I'm trying to think through what's the for your customers.
Sure.
How have they arrived with you all? Is it what's the aha moment or the compelling event by which case they're like, you know what, we're actually just going to go build this ourselves versus going to go try and map out as many MCP servers and leverage what's already being built out there? Is there a failure or a point at which you can't progress further? Is it there's nothing off the shelf that addresses my needs? Like, what's the thing that says, oh, this might be a more complex, but it's going to be a more powerful solution. It's what I need. The background behind this is, as you're thinking about buying and investing, let me say investing, because buying would imply a vendor. If you're going to say investing in your tech stack and how you go to market, the ROI and the business case for we're just going to go build this ourselves versus, and again, this is back to the build versus buy. What's the thing that's driving that build conversation?
I would say it's kind of split into two groups. I think there's the people who've already started building it themselves and start to feel pain around number of integrations or how many subscriptions they have to
Experience.
manage.
I've done, I've failed. I now need to go to the next step. Okay.
And those are generally a little bit more technical, have already tried building stuff, have vibe coded stuff for the last year or so, and like have a muscle for, hey, this part sucks. And I don't want to sign up for 10 providers. Like pay as you go makes total sense. And then there's the folks who have not quite solved their problem. And I think it's like, hey, the mining example. They're going into like Apollo and typing in mining, and I don't know where to start here. And I think for those folks, we run one, there's two prompts I usually run. One is just have them describe what they're trying to do and just run the first one for them, either on a call or have them do it themselves. That's usually a pretty magical aha moment, because if they describe something that they think is very hard to do, and then our system, it'll show it tried 10 different providers, and these are the ones that actually have data. Here's the public sources it would recommend. And when you combine all of them, here's a sample of 10 companies to reach out to. That is pretty magical, especially when it's like more niche. So I'd say if you have tried it before, it's the technical pain of rate limits and retries and storing data and that like technical pain. For folks who are not quite there, or just getting more acquainted with this type of go-to-market motion, it's when they see the problem solved that used to feel unsolvable, and that generally hits. And then I think the third kind of story I've seen is someone will come in with two questions that we get on almost every call. It's what's the best data provider for me and what signals matter. Usually in the opposite order. What's the best signal? What signals really matter? And then, okay, what's the best data?
But the
provider for
people that really know their stuff start with the data first, and the other people always want the magical signals that will make their lives easier.
Exactly. Like what matters to me? And I'm like, I can't fully answer that for you because I'm not
Yeah.
you, I'm not your business. But here's a pattern we can use to do that. And what we usually start with is close lost analysis. And it's not really looking at the specifics of the opportunities or anything like that. It just goes to the websites and it pulls keywords, phrases. It's a skill that's just available in Deepline. So we call it niche signals. And it will go look at your last 100 wins and losses and get all the potential signals that we can find about all of the companies in the list. So it goes very, very broad and not very deep across all of them, and then runs a super tiny ML model, like a very simple regression that says, what's the difference between wins and losses? What is correlated with wins and not correlated with losses? And the delta between the signals that are on wins and losses is where we usually find something very actionable right away. So it can be anything from, we have one example where it's a company in the financial services space. And if their target account has FDIC on their website, it's 2x more likely to close. If it has SOC 2 compliance, it's 1/10 is likely to close. And that's just a signal of B2B and B2C. But that's just a factor that the model found because those are more likely to be on the website than we are a B2C company and we are a B2B company. So what are those proxies that we can use to actually find something useful? I would say that's the third aha moment that we found, but usually it's that middle one. If they've never used us before, have any idea what we do, we just run one, and within 2 minutes, you usually see what is interesting to you. And then for folks who are more mature and have already gone through that process, I would say what signals matter and then the developer experience are the two that tend to land.
Jai, the one thing I've been spending a lot of time thinking about right now is open source GTM,
Mhm.
and where, for example, you could have multiple teams in multiple different places code up like a marketing analytics tool or an email tool or something like that. I'm curious if you envision playing out that people might build plays on top of
Mhm.
Deepline that people would share cross functionally or cross company, or is the AI just doing that for them and they don't need that side of things? Like, for example, say Noah builds an amazing Deepline play or skill. Is that something that Noah would be sharing out there where people could come find it? Or no, Deepline's just smart enough to figure it out?
No, absolutely. We highly recommend sharing your plays. We have a workflow section. I'm happy to share my screen also. I don't know if that is easier, but essentially
We might
today,
we might lose people because it's I think most people listen to
no,
it
no worries.
Yeah.
audio, but what we'll do is we'll
Yeah,
geek out afterward. We can do some
totally.
fun content together.
Um, yeah, so in the workflow system today, you can share a play and it will export the code and not any of the PII or sensitive information. So it is
Love
just
it.
code, and then you can point another agent at that URL, and they will immediately be able to replicate it and migrate it to your workflow. So let's say a company in a different ICP or different target market, you just want like the workflow steps to be borrowed, but not the details. You can give your agent the previous play. It has the code. It will do everything that should be the same, but tune it to your particular use case and your providers. If you use HubSpot instead of Salesforce, it will switch that for you. So the model is kind of like sharing information is incredibly encouraged, and that's why having everything as code is so valuable for us. Is everything can be easily shared. It's deterministic. It's the same for everyone. And so yeah, we encourage it, and you can do it in the app, send the URL securely, and it's super easy.
Well, it sounds like you're quietly building a CLI first tech stack, right? Right. You're gonna have two tech stacks eventually. One that's really driven from the developers, another that's maybe still legacy sitting on top, and eventually one has to consume the other.
Yeah, consume, also power. Like how should you populate your CRM? Like maybe reps will be in the CRM longer than we would expect, or if they're using Claude as their main interface, Claude still needs to pull that information from somewhere. So I think we're quietly replacing parts of it, but at the same time, that a product adoption piece is still the hardest part. you can get all this data stuff nailed and then have absolutely zero value because nobody uses it. And that we do see that. I've done it. I've thought something was really smart the way we did it, and then we find out that we did it for a team that doesn't use Slack, and we pushed everything to Slack. Like very simple mistakes, but you learn from those quickly. And I think the rep facing side, I think will be still pretty fragmented because one, it's kind of organizationally built. It's almost like a cultural thing of how they want to work and how they feel like working. But in all of those cases, they should be able to pull from the CLI first world. But the person in the back will almost always be configuring things with these CLI tools, just because the speed.
The UI is really the difficult challenge, because it's no
Yeah.
matter what you build, it's got to be consumer friendly. It has to be something that they naturally gravitate to. And that's always the challenge. Everything that was just data first, that was going through Slack or Teams, whatever, that they kind of didn't really ever materialize, because you needed a place to work and you needed that in the single environment. But it's still a land grab, because that still doesn't exist today. It's definitely still not your CRM. Some of the old school layers like Gong and Clarion, those tools, try to overlap. There still is I think that there's still an opportunity to create that custom interface where you live, that pulls all the signals in.
The pattern we've been hearing from kind of bleeding edge teams is centralized data and decentralized agents. So they spend even more time getting really clean data in a central location, a data warehouse or the CRM. Most of these teams are data warehouse centric, and then they might operate. But even OpenAI, I would say, is doing this internally. The RAMP team and the OpenAI team gave a talk last week also at our event, and kind of went into their approach here. And the RAMP one was especially interesting because they went very aggressive on an internal MCP for all go-to-market data. So they built their own MCP on their own data that's well tested, and all the data coming out of it is very structured and designed for this exact use case. And then reps build their own perfect UI on top of it. So they can go to Lovable and build a custom app that's just for how they want to work. And so it's almost like, is the right answer a UI at all? Should we be designing it for everyone, or can they kind of build?
Nobody ever wants the same thing, but I love that idea.
Yeah, 80% is not necessarily good enough anymore. You can get to that 100%. This is perfect for me, and we've seen that pretty consistently work well. I think there's maintenance challenges because now you have all these scattered things, and that was one of the things Keon mentioned last week of take the good things and centralize them and try to put more guardrails against the bad things over time. But over time, it's generally going to go, I think, that direction. That's what we're feeling.
I agree. I think that's what we're seeing everywhere, which is you have to centralize your infrastructure, your knowledge, your context graph, your data, because those are pipelines that you need to mature and be able to depend upon, versus individual reps figuring all this stuff out at the data layer. One thing I was curious on is error checking. Like, as I built a lot of data flows, sometimes you can not be aware for a while that your data is not flowing correctly, right? So say I said, hey, enrich this company, and then all of a sudden just nothing starts flowing for a while. Have you built error checking into the data flows yet, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, we typically use like the workflows are very generalized. So for example, I have a workflow that looks at the logs because the CLI has full access to all the logs of what's happening, what calls were made, what API calls, how much credit you have used, which APIs are working versus not working, which ones failed. It has full visibility into your instance. So the agent is very good at debugging it. So we have everything from like trigger workflow if something fails, or just every 6 hours go and look at all the logs and see if something strange has happened that I should look into. The cool part is you can actually like go even further and have Codex or Claude Code just start auto triaging and say, hey, go find anything that we can optimize or improve on, or something that might have been wrong, and actually just start fixing it and give me a PR to review, and I'll come in and make sure it looks good. I think our job I think coding agents and software engineers have been saying this, but your job is now like quality checks and making sure you're doing the right thing. But the agents are fairly good at writing code or to solve problems. Not perfect, so I wouldn't let it go free yet, but we can automate a lot of the smaller tasks. So if it's like a minor schema issue, the agent's going to get that 99% of the
I
time.
like that. And in theory, also what you talked about with the open router vision is
Mhm.
if data source that is primary is failing, you can auto switch to the next one.
Exactly. Yep. And so that's how we mostly handle it for our use cases. If Exa doesn't work well for news, or uh, when we design workflows in our workflow skill, we also typically add like an eval step of run this check against either a sample or all of the rows and make sure that the output matches our requirements, like uh, has to have a contact phone number and contact email, has to have this news article, has to have at least one signal that is relevant or important. And we use LLMs for that at a very low cost. It's a simple check. So I add that to one of my workflows, and I get an email if it fails. If it passes that, it just continues with the workflow. And so you can add those as well, depending on what the use case is. But there's lots of different ways to solve these problems now, and I think we're all kind of figuring out which ones make sense for which use cases.
I
Hmm.
love it. I'd be interested, the pay as you go philosophy. I agree. I mean, at a unnamed unicorn had a vendor that I paid $450,000 a year to,
Yeah.
right? And I knew that if I were to a la carte that, it would be a hell of a lot cheaper. But we ended up having those fights, and it's like they're kind of putting their data behind a wall. Are
Mhm.
you having to go out with every one of these vendors and do these negotiations to get them to pay as you go? And what does that market look like, and how is it evolving?
Yeah, I would say all but like two of the the data vendors have been very easy to work with and kind of supportive of what we're doing and what we're building. So it's actually been easier in some ways. I don't think we're
I'm gonna
the,
scribble down the one, and we can talk after we stop recording.
yeah,
I
yeah.
wanna ask
Yeah,
about the first
yeah.
one. Yeah.
We can we're not negotiating super aggressively right now. Also, we're just kind of get everyone in the platform, see who's a good fit, and then when someone is a good fit, we immediately start working on better terms. So we're kind of letting the data and our customers speak for themselves also, and like what makes sense to do deeper integrations with, or what can we kind of do like a lightweight, off the shelf, pay as you go model to start. And so as we get more data, we can, same open router model, as we understand better about which data points you need for which use cases, we're able to negotiate more aggressively with those. So yeah, we are going out and making partnership agreements with all of the data providers that we have. And then as we find ones that are outperforming or very valuable or high demand, which we also slightly recommend based on the quality that we're seeing, uh, we make deeper integrations with those.
You're also commoditizing data vendors over time too, but that's okay.
It's
Commoditizing
my
is, I don't know if that's even the right word. I mean, it's a reserved commodity to some degree already.
yeah,
Uh,
it's an interesting space. I
yeah,
think the public, yeah, the public data set stuff is kind of separate. Um, but yeah, proprietary data, the quality gaps that you get, the staleness. At the same time, we're all kind of going from LinkedIn. So like what LinkedIn scraping policy allows is probably the limiting factor in
true,
most of
true.
these folks' data quality. And it's just how good are they at getting around it. There are other providers we've seen that are like more niche or have an angle that we think is valuable. People Data Labs has really good data for folks that are not on LinkedIn, and that's super valuable. So I think we've seen some cases where uh, it does make sense to take a proprietary or more expensive provider. Um, in other cases, it's like there's one in the SMB space that is very expensive, no programmatic access, and what we are now finding is we can kind of make a daisy chain of data providers and get better outcomes for the same space. So some I think are going to have harder times defending their specialties or their verticals. Others, I think, if they have a unique angle that we haven't been able to see an easy way to replicate, uh, are going to be more stable over time. So
I
it's
couldn't
kind of
agree more. There are some people that claim to have proprietary data that's not really
yeah,
proprietary. I always
exactly.
love every time I connect with a data vendor, like, tell me your secret sauce and how you get their data. Some will tell
Mhm.
you, some won't.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Well, even like the Dun& Bradstreets for years, this is a solo example, but like they owned the account hierarchy and it's not it's not privileged information. It's just out there. It's just somebody had to go do the work. There's now some of these companies like Kernel and so on that are going after and like trying to attack it, which seems to me a very good target to go after because it's such an expensive element. But like, so you can go after data vendors, but also build skills just to create your own data sets, right? So then and eventually you're not as reliant on some of the mainstays. You can start branching off. And if that is, people are sharing that skill set, that seems to be almost like the crowdsourced,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Skills based on what we're doing are super powerful. We had one customer ask for org charts. They were using Zoom Info, and they're like, the org charts are great, but not every rep has a seat. So, can you just make an org chart for us? And our solution was just throw as much data as we possibly can at Claude and see if it could come up with an org chart. And then we kind of cross-referenced against known good org charts that they had from previous engagements. And we kept iterating, and now that skill is fairly consistent. Like we are able to generate just by combining 10 or 15 different data sources. The cost of one org chart to be really exhaustive is like $7. So it's expensive in theory for like an org chart, but when compared to the alternatives,
But how much time are people wasting putting those org charts together?
Exactly.
So $7 in the scheme of things. Now, given
100%.
it's a sales rep's time, what is of all the skills that people are building, is there anything that's just like really, really cool? That's like, man, this company built something out, even if you don't name the company. Is there something, I think attention was talked about, like the lead routing stuff, but like something that's really innovative, top of mind, anything that you can think of that's just like mind blowing for us anyways. I don't know.
Yeah, blow Noah's in my mind. See if you can do it.
Yeah. There's some stuff that I think are like unique, interesting aspects to what they're doing. But like genuinely, I think the people who are really outperforming everyone else are just doing the fundamentals really well, and they're spending more time on the fundamentals. I think one that I really like is the same signal approach that I just mentioned earlier of take all the good examples and bad examples, or wins and losses effectively, and just reapply that to every other part of go-to-market. The pattern that we're seeing work extremely well again is just more examples and include negative examples. And if you give as many examples as possible of what good looks like with negative examples as well, this almost looked good, or it's an opportunity that we opened. So there was something there, but it wasn't a good fit. And have the system generate an ML model to tell the difference between the two. That works.
I'm actually talking to vendors right now about the same, because people tend to partition where their focus is. It's like, oh, we're a marketing stack. Oh, we're a sales stack. Oh, we're a CS stack. It's a full circle. Like what you learn in that closed one should apply to the opportunities that you ultimately accept and qualify, and how you track and right. That's
So the example was a guy named YG Hong at owner.com used this for cold calling, a cold calling predictive model based on all the features they had about the contact, the lead, the restaurant, every detail that they had. They just threw it in, let Claude do the ML feature engineering, iterated, got more signals, cleaned up data, and then said, can we predict who's most likely to answer a phone call? And YG's very, very smart and a really good engineer, but he's not like a data scientist. So he's learning alongside. He did a talk at one of our previous events also. And he basically was like, we just threw a bunch of data at it. We found that certain contacts were 3x more likely to answer the phone. And we implemented it, and that was the predicted outcome. And we ended up at like 2.8x. And so that's actually what they're seeing now of good scored accounts from this ML model that is maybe not perfectly statistically significant, but like directionally valuable enough to continue using. And I think for B2B, you don't need to be statistically significant. If you're pointing someone in the right direction or a better direction than the status quo, you're better off. And the cost of doing that is now almost zero. So throw a bunch of good examples, throw a bunch of people who didn't answer the phone and people who did answer the phone, and let the system find the signal in there. And you can do it for leads, you can do it for cold calls, for opportunities, for account propensity scores. It doesn't really matter what the underlying thing is. It's just good examples, bad examples.
I love that. As we kind of wrap up, any last advice for teams utilizing you, like mistakes they make, or I think we've talked about good tactics, but anything where you see, oh, this customer is going to make that mistake and I wish they wouldn't make it as they use you folks.
Yeah, I think the two things that tend to indicate like something that won't go well. One is I think just like the mental model switch from the old world to the new world. Old world is structured. It's like I'm going to go get data point A from here, move it over here. Now get data point B, combine those two, create another column. It's very like structured, almost like a CSV approach of I'm going to define every column one by one and kind of micromanage the process.
By the
And
way, on
that
this one, I've learned on all of my data models on Whisper, I'm ripping out structured fields to unstructured. It's like
yeah.
field by field. I'm like, ah, crap. Now I got to go rip that out. So yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. So it's micromanaging, almost trying to be like too prescriptive in the solution, and that ends up taking a lot more time. It's actually easier to break because you're kind of not letting the model test itself in some regard. So that usually gets outperformed by really good outcomes and evals and saying this is what I want it to look like with extreme detail of like this is the bolded text and the not bolded text, and here's what the numbers should be, and being really specific on that and letting the system figure it out. So micromanagement, and then I think biting off too much.
yeah.
I think there's like a tendency to come in with a mindset of like I'm building an AI SDR, and it's like okay, well we can do almost all the things that an SDR can do. But if you try to describe an AI SDR and build it at that level, you will probably fail because it's just too
Yeah.
many degrees of freedom. And what does that actually mean? Nobody knows. But if you break that down into, okay, what are our SDRs spending time on? And then go one by one on, okay, pre-call research. Here's the problem. Here's how we solve it. Okay, now let's do this cold call answering. Now here's another solution that we're going to put together. And when you combine all of those together, you're effectively getting to an AI SDR. But if you think about it that way, you're going to get distracted by all these like weird, not that important nuances. But if you break it down into really small, bite-sized pieces and just go one by one in what feels like the most valuable thing, you're going to get a much better outcome and very consistently.
God, I love how deeply you think about this. We could probably run for hours more. We will thank you for taking the time today. This was amazing. I think Noah and I are both experimenting with it. We know a ton of folks at GTM Council are. Every time I post anything about you guys, there's like 3 or 4 super fans that pop their heads
Amazing.
up. So it's really
Yeah,
cool.
would love to hear more.